Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm Adam. This is Open Late, and tonight I will be unboxing the G.I. Joe classified Cobra Snake battle suit, known alternatively, I guess, as the Cobra Snake armor, or at least that's what I thought it was called. That's what I remembered it being called. This was one of those sort of vintage things that not everybody had. I mean, it was a relatively early release as far as the vintage GI Joe line goes. I mean, it's kind of one of those vintage ones too, where it was just a clamshell. Like it was kind of two pieces that went together, and then it just had arms that articulated. But it was pretty basic, pretty simple. This is very much an evolved version of that. This is very much a 2025 version of that. Updated in terms of design, updated in terms of deco articulation. In every way, this thing is an upgrade, and this is, an improvement over what the vintage offering was. It's just really, really cool. I'm very, very excited to get this thing out of the box. But before I do, I just want to take a quick look at the box. And not because I necessarily want to keep it, but I realize for every one of these things that I unbox, I have my sort of impressions of the box documented and and by extension sort of archived. So yes, thumbs up, but also I didn't mean to do that. So in a way, when I do these unboxing videos, what I'm kind of doing is giving myself the ability to not keep the box. I didn't. What am I doing? Is it seeing something on the package that's giving it the idea that I'm giving thumbs up and thumbs down? I don't know, but this is kind of driving me crazy. What's going on? Why is it doing that? Anyway, I do like the emotions turned on because I think it's kind of fun. But anyway, I'll take my hands off screen, and then maybe that will stop it from reacting. Anyways, snake armor, snake battle suit, whatever you want to call it. It looks to be really, really cool. I was very, very excited about this. I love the vehicles, especially in this size, this sort of small to medium size, because I just think that they are really great and really fun. And I remember GI Joe, and I remember lots of other lines. Part of it was the vehicles, and a big part of it was the vehicles. So to be getting all this stuff is really, really cool. And I'm excited for more. There's still more stuff that I want to get, and some of it's a little bit comical and funny. I still want the Coastal Defender, and if you know what the Coastal Defender is, you know why that kind of a weird one that somebody would want. I still want the Buzzbore. I think that would be a really, really fun thing for Classified to do. I think they could they could have some fun with it, and update it a little bit. But anyway, enough about that. Let's take a quick look at the box. So on the front of the box, we get this really nice big render. You've got 3 snake armors there. You've got a Cobra Trooper, the retro carded Cobra Trooper climbing out of that one. And then you've got 2 more that are all sort of geared up and ready to go, and configured differently. So you've got all 3 of them configured differently. You've got fists on this one. You got a flamethrower, and then whatever this thing is on that one. You've got the claw and a rocket on this one. Explosions in the background. It's sort of this bombed out city. I don't know what city it is. Maybe Springfield, Cobra's home base. But really, really cool. Some of the normal stuff that you get on there. Choking hazard. What 3-year-old kid is actually playing? 4 plus. Okay, that's good news, because that means 2 of 3 of my kids are allowed to play with this. On the top, it is number 162. On the bottom, we get some legalese. On one side, oh man, I'm absolutely destroying my... on one, yeah, you're not going to be able to see it. You'll just have to take my word for it. On one side, you get the blue digital thing, and then actually this has abilities in the same way that the figures do, and then the QR code there. I don't know where the QR code will take you. I've literally never scanned one of those QR codes. On the other side, we get some art, some snake armor art. And then on the back, we get, the full sort of breakdown of what you get. So you get the snake armor, which is 11.9 inches tall. I mean, talk about sort of not giving them the gimme there. It's a foot tall. Like, what? Come on now. 11.9 inches. So you get the snake armor, you get different hands or sort of attachments that attach at the wrist. We get some blast effects, and then this description, for how to put this thing together, which is interesting. There's been a couple of these now that didn't come with blueprints, and they tend to have this. So I can only assume that this won't come with blueprints, because it tells you, where to put these things on the back of the box. So, and then some call outs on this side with some of the deco, some of the tampo, some of the screens that are inside the snake armor. Yeah, this thing is cool. The box is surprising. The box I thought would be bigger for something that I think is pretty big. But for whatever reason, this box just doesn't immediately strike me as all that big. But that being said, I guess, if the snake armor is in it in this orientation, then it, the snake armor probably is quite big, but because they put it in this horizontal orientation, it just doesn't seem quite as big. The box itself, if I had to guess, it's probably somewhere in the range of about 8 inches, 9 inches. So clearly the snake armor is going to sort of stand taller than this. But anyway, there is the box. For what it's worth, for anybody that's excited about the box or interested in the box, or I don't know, I'm gonna change it. I gotta adjust this because this is gonna drive me crazy because I bumped into it twice already. And let's just go ahead and flatten it out. It makes my life a lot easier. Okay, that'll work. So yeah, that's the snake armor box. Let's get it out of the box, shall we? Yeah, that's why you're here, because it's unboxing. Anyway, before I do that, just going to say hello to the chat. Local Base Walker, good to have you. Luke from Ottawa reporting. Good to have you, buddy. Fellow Canadian. Gabrielle is here as well. No chewing. Good to have you, my friend. Good to have everybody here. I will say this again at the end, but I will say it now. It's way more fun to open toys with friends. So thank you guys for joining me. Let's get this out of the box. I cheated. I cut the piece of tape to allow me to not have to do that step now. Does that make it any faster? No, of course not. Okay, so there you go. He's horizontally in the package. And if I stand him up, he doesn't fit in frame. So I'm gonna get everything out of the box, this way, I guess. But yeah, he takes up the whole box, which I can't say for a lot of things. I mean, I'll be perfectly honest. A lot of this stuff, you open the box and there's a lot of negative space. But in this case, the box is very, very full with the battle armor, the snake battle armor. Get my little snips out. My Leatherman tool is like my go-to. This sits at my desk 24/7. Anytime I need a tool, if it's not on this thing, then it's probably a pretty obscure function that I need to perform. It's got scissors, a knife, a bunch of screwdrivers, on and on and on. Anyway, you guys don't care. I'm just stalling while I get this out of the package. It's big. It's big. It doesn't even fit in the frame anymore. I'm gonna have to adjust my camera once I get everything out of the box. Oof, oof. I guess I could go vertical with my camera, but I'm not gonna do that. Let's see if I can. Yeah, but if I pull it forward. No, I'm gonna go a little bit wider. Hold on. Bang. Too wide. That'll work. Get everything adjusted. That'll work. That'll do. All right, let's see. Brian Brink is here as well. He says, curious of your thoughts once you get it unboxed. Spoiler alert. When it's something this big, when I'm gonna open up these bags as I talk. When it's something, no, I'm gonna open these first because these are too loud. Couple of tanks. Couple of hands. Some blast effects. Some more accessories. The alternate hands, I guess. When a robot has alternate hands, they're flamethrowers and rockets. Little known fact. And then the front canopy piece that's going to clip on right there. In the back piece that's going to clip on the back. But as I was saying, Brian said, curious of your thoughts once you get it unboxed. Full disclosure, for something like this, especially when I get multiples, and I did get multiples, I got 2 of these. I felt like 2 was enough. I wanted more, but I only got 2. But when I get 2 of them, if I'm going to do an unboxing of this, I actually open the first one before I open this one. Partly to know how things sort of go together so that it's not super boring. But partly because you will see in a second, I want to make sure that it sort of does what I want. I want to have a good impression of it first, because if I have to sort of sit here and play with this thing for like 20 minutes to sort of figure out all the joints and figure out where the articulation is, and so on and so forth, I don't necessarily have a good opinion of it. So I opened the other one last night. I got these on Monday. I opened one last night, and then I'm opening this one tonight with you guys so that I can share, my thoughts. But my thoughts would be really immediate first impressions. And sometimes, you get a first impression that you're like, it's amazing. And then you find something that's like not so amazing. Or alternatively, you initially sort of get a bad impression of it because you can't quite figure something out, and then something clicks, after you've played with it for 10 or 15 minutes, but by then you might be done the video, right? So I could have sort of switched on to this thing after the fact. Spoiler alert, I love this thing. It's super, super fun. And Brian Brink says, by the way, I used a Cobra officer. He fit in well. Well, Brian, I did something fairly similar, but not similar. Stay tuned. Billionaire says, what an awesome toy. It really is an awesome toy. Okay, so very quickly, let me go over all the things that just came out of the box. So we got the battle armor itself, you know, the sort of bulk of the thing right there. And then let's move this all off so I can sort of do it one at a time. We get the front opening hatch that's going to go right on the front there. We get a back panel that is going to plug onto the back. We get 2 tanks, 2 jet fuel tanks. Now they are left and right. And like I said, I did these last night, so I know which one's which. Okay, they're going to go on like that way. So just sort of get them all set up and orientated so that it'll be quicker and easier. You get these little 2 adapter pieces. Now these plug in to the arms and then everything else plugs into them. Now I know this because I did one last night, but this is kind of the sort of thing. Why did they need this adapter to be separate? I don't know why they couldn't have had this piece sort of pre-installed, pre-assembled on the S.N.A.K.E armor itself. I'll take a look at that in a second. But it doesn't quite line up with the wrist, which is really weird. But also, you know, I just don't know why it's not on there. Maybe there's a reason, and maybe I just haven't figured it out. Maybe, you know, the other shoe will drop while I'm sort of putting this one together, but we'll see. We get 2 hands, trigger fingers. It is classified, so why wouldn't it have trigger fingers? The funny thing is, it doesn't come with anything that requires a trigger finger, but here they are. Maybe you got a big giant weapon from a Transformers set or something like that, maybe a Gundam that you could put in there. But you don't need it because it's a robot and it comes with alternate hands that do blasty type things. So it's kind of weird that they're trigger hands. I'll be totally honest. I don't really know why they did that. Also, not articulated, which isn't the end of the world. But even if they had just put, you know, even if they had done more of a fist, not a trigger hand, and put a piece of articulation, you know, right in here, and you could sort of open and close it so that it could grip things, I kind of would have been more excited about that. I'm not disappointed as such that they've done it the way that they've done it, but they could have done it better. That's all I'm saying. We get a claw hand, as I mentioned. The weird thing is, this is like a harder plastic. It's a little bit different and also not hinged. So I don't, you know, for display purposes, this thing looks really good. You know, it's sculpted nicely, plenty of detail, no paint, and does not pinch. A little bit disappointed in that respect. We get a rocket, missile, whatever it is. I don't really know. This is a softer plastic, so it is bendy. So 2 of 2 have come out of the package ever so slightly bent. There's a weird thing going on with the rocket too, where it's like off center almost, like it should be rotated ever so slightly that way. I don't know if that's on purpose. I don't know if that's just because it's not quite straight. Like, as you can see, like it's just not quite straight. So from certain angles, it looks a little bit better than from others. But anyway, it just seems like a weird one. This seems really weird to me. I mean, this seems weird. The claw seems a little bit weird. Some of the hand attachments seem a little bit weird. I have my 2 favorites. They're coming up. And I think mine are always going to have the 2 attachments that I prefer because I just don't love these attachments. But the next one kind of looks like it is some version of this. And I kind of thought that maybe these are interchangeable, and maybe they are. Like maybe there's glue in here and I could just yank it out and plug that in there, which would have made more sense to have this sort of as like a rocket launching hand almost. But the weird thing about this is that the front bit has the soft plastic that you get with this, and then the back bit has the hard plastic that you get with the claw. And so if you look very closely, and I think it just might pick it up on camera there, there's a different finish to the two plastics because they're different hardness. This is a more rigid plastic. This is a softer plastic. And so color matching different durometers of plastic is not as easy as people might think. And so I think that's why there's a little bit of a difference there. Now, visually, it doesn't make that much difference because, once you have it in the figure and sort of, from far away, you don't necessarily even know. Well, you do because I've mentioned it, but you don't really mention it or you don't really notice it. It's there. It is the reality of that thing. But life goes on. Then we get this. This might be my favorite attachment. This is kind of a flamethrower type attachment. What's interesting is that it has this articulated sort of hand hold. You can hold it. A hand could hold onto that part. Now, I have not tried this yet, but I intend to try it tonight. I'm curious to see if this hand, like if I mount this on this hand and I mount this on this hand, I'm curious to see if the arms will cross over the torso enough that I can actually put this hand on the flamethrower. But also, why would you do that on a big giant mecha? You would assume that the pneumatics in here or whatever sort of they're using would be able to support this and aim it and move it and manipulate it in such a way that would not require a hand. That's why you would need this, is to sort of stabilize it or whatever. Isn't this big giant suit going to be able to stabilize this? Why does it need this? Why does it have this? I don't know. Feel free to explain it to me. And then last but not least, I already mentioned them, but I will mention them again. We get 3 blast effects with this. The sort of after effect blast effect. We get the longer flamethrower effect, which I believe we may have gotten before. As well as this blast effect, fire effect, which I really do like. The paint apps on this are quite cool. You get sort of yellow to orange, and then on the bottom, or the top, I suppose, there's more of an orange, and then on the bottom or top, it's more yellow. So there's some variation there. There's some variance. So it's not just sort of a solid translucent piece. And we get a similar thing going on with this flame. So it's very much orange on the bottom and much, much lighter on the top, with the base plastic seemingly being that sort of yellow color. So yeah, very, very cool. All this stuff together, is the snake armor. I think it looks really, really good. Very curious what you guys think. Did you guys get this? Brian, I suspect that you already got this. So I'm curious to know what you think, because you're curious to know what I think, and I sort of already told you my first impressions. But yeah, I'm curious to know what you guys think. Is this cool? Is this something you guys picked up? Is it something that you wanted to pick up and missed? Because I do know that it sold out quite quickly, or relatively quickly. I don't know. I always sort of get in there, order my stuff, and get out. And while I used to have tons of time to pay attention to like G.I. Joe classified boards and talk about what people got and didn't got and missed, and how terrible Hasbro is, I just get in, get my stuff, get out. And then when it shows up, I'm excited and I'm happy. But yeah, there it is. Whoop, there it is. I'm gonna get this thing put together, and then I'm gonna sort of look at some of the details, and then I'll sort of get it a little bit posed up. As I said, I kind of cheated, and I did play with my other one last night. I don't mean that I cheated on this one with the other one. I mean that I cheated for the sake of the video. I did it. I cheated for you guys. But anyway, let's see. Brian said, I'm curious to see what companies like Gridiron will come up with for additional attachments. Yeah, that's a good point, because it is just sort of a standard universal connection there. So it'd be pretty easy to do that. And Brian says the vintage toy had a missile and claw. So the vintage, yeah, you know what? I'll go over that when I sort of get this thing together, because the vintage setup is not what I don't like the vintage setup. I feel like there's I mean, I have a preference. Anyway, I'll get into it when I get there. Studio Henge says, "Hey Adam, just got mine today." Studio Henge, I believe I've seen that name before, but good to have you. Says, "Hey Adam, just got mine today. It seems so floppy in YouTube reviews. Was surprised it actually isn't, but maybe it just looked floppy because I watched everything at 1.75 speed." Maybe there. What I will say, at least with the other one, and I'll maybe I'll sort of circle back to that comment, because there's a looseness to it. I wouldn't say that it's floppy, but there's a looseness to it, despite the fact that there's a bunch of like ratchets in it. But I think that's a little bit by design. And when I kind of get a little bit more into it, as I said, I'll kind of circle back to that one. And Billionaire says, "I love mine." Brian says, "As a hardcore Transformers collector, I was a bit disappointed in the articulation. Also wish it felt more rigid," which is totally fair. And I think, Brian, as a Transformers guy, I totally understand what you mean. This does not feel like a Transformer. So for anybody that is a Transformers fan, that's used to Transformers, that's inevitably going to sort of compare this to a Transformer, it's not that. What I will say is my first impressions of the first one that I opened, and I'll sort of give a second first impression with this one, is that this felt like a classified figure robot. So there's some of the joints that feel like they move a little bit, and I kind of anticipated it would be like full kind of ratchet top to bottom, and it kind of isn't, but it kind of is. Like it's interesting. It's interesting. Studio Hench says, "My Cobra logo on his arm is weird and skewed though. Sloppy missed print, but not worth returning it over." Mine's a little bit sloppy on that one. It's better on the other one, and I'll come back to that one too, and I'll compare notes. Well, here, let's do it. Let's do it right now. Actually, let me adjust my light one more time to get it a little bit more oriented so you can see the details a little better closer to the camera. So there is the Cobra logo on this one. It's clearly a little scuffed. You can see, here, if I turn it, you'll probably see it better. You can see that the Cobra's eye is a little bit like it was still wet and something kind of dragged across it, is what it feels like, because that part of the snake, I don't know what that's called, is a little bit scuffed, and then over the eye is a little bit scuffed. Here's what I will say about that. It doesn't bother me in the slightest. Like at all. I don't care. If you hadn't mentioned it, Studio Henge, I probably never would have, thought twice of that. For me, it's sort of like, okay, if somebody put a stencil on this thing and spray painted it, and and then somebody bumped it and scuffed it, you probably wouldn't paint it again. You probably wouldn't think anything of it. And so there you go. That's that one. We'll look at the second one when I bring the other one out, because the second one already has a figure in it. So once I sort of get further along, I'll come back. But remind me if I don't take a look at the logo on the other one. Brian says, "Mine was also missing the details for the screens on the front piece." Mine has them. We'll take a look at that in a sec. Brian says, "Overall, it's really nice. I think I just had different expectations." Okay, so therein lies a really, curious problem that I think Hasbro has. And I'm not, I'm not the first person to mention this, and it's certainly not going to be a shock to anybody. But Hasbro doesn't seem to share, the engineering and the sort of design principles across brands, across lines. So what GI Joe does and what Transformers does and what Star Wars does, they don't line up. So if you're collecting multiple Hasbro lines, you'll grow to sort of expect certain things, and they just don't always line up. Brian, as a Transformers guy, I suspect you probably thought this was going to feel like a Transformer. And I did too, because Hasbro knows how to build, robots that move and sort of hold a pose and aren't sort of wiggly and whatever. But this is, here for anybody, we'll get right into it. All four of the limbs are kind of wiggly, but part of that, I think, is because I've never seen this on a Transformer. Maybe it does it. Brian, feel free to sort of say something. But the arms and the legs have a similar thing. So the arms are super stiff when you go to move them at first, but there's no ratchet. The first time I cracked it, I thought it was a ratchet, but it's not. This will do the same thing. Listen. You almost have to like crack it, which is crazy. I felt like I was going to break it the first time. And the legs do the same thing, and then they're loose. There's no ratchet. And then they move. But this is what I've never seen on a Transformer. They all telescope out. And I don't know why, apart from like just for posing reasons, but the limbs telescope. And I think that's why they're so loose, because they're on ball joints. They're not, it's not the articulation that you get in a Transformer. It is like GI Joe type articulation. The ball joint on this one is weird because it's not the barbell doesn't go into the leg. The barbell actually goes that way, as far as I can tell, but doesn't. So this doesn't really have rotation there, but it does wiggle and it does go in and out. There isn't any rotation in the leg. You get articulation at the knee, which is ratcheted. There is a little bit of articulation in the ankle, but it's really sort of like up, level, down. That's it. The knee is 1, 2, 3 kind of ratchets. That's it. As I said, this spins relatively freely. There's no ratchet there. This spins freely, no ratchet there. There is a cut here. There's articulation at what would be the bicep. There's articulation at what there's a ratchet at what would be the elbow. But the range of motion is pretty limited. That's the sculpt for the arm. So when you ratchet that up, it doesn't even go 90 degrees because it bumps into the sculpt for the top there. But that being said, you can just rotate that to sort of aim whatever sort of thing you put in there. Here is the hole where you put that little extra piece. I will put one of those in now and sort of show you what I mean by, I don't know why this couldn't have been just sort of part of the sculpt or the like build in terms of how it goes on, but it doesn't sit flush. Let's see if I can show you. There is a little bit of overhang between sort of the adapter. Can you see that? So it doesn't sit flush. It's fine on the other side. You don't notice it. There's no issue there. And from, straight on, it works. It's where it should be. But as I said, there's a weird thing going on there where the bottom side just doesn't, it's not sort of in line. I don't know how to explain it. It doesn't bother me in any way other than I noticed it, and I don't know why they did it. I suspect, based on how it was sculpted and whatever, maybe there was a disconnect between people that were sculpting these bits and the person that sculpted the arm or something like that. But anyway, I may as well put the other windows on right now. So you need those in to put the hands or the missile or whatever. I tried it without for the sake of, you know, full a very professional, thorough review, and it didn't work. So there is, because you have that sort of telescoping kind of thing, you do get the sort of option to sort of angle the arms a little bit more. So I think that's why it has that. Now they could have done that with some sort of, not a butterfly in this case, but this piece that's right in here, this sort of shoulder joint, could have been designed differently. And that probably would have prevented this from being so kind of wiggly and having this weird negative space in here when you do have it sort of telescoped out. One other thing that I will mention that I noticed but doesn't necessarily bother me, from the wrong angle, you see all these screws that hold this thing together, which is, it looks bad. It looks bad. I don't know why this couldn't have just been like a click fit where, you know, the pieces clip together and then were designed to just not come apart. You could, in theory, take this whole thing apart if you needed to or wanted to, as a result of having all of those. The leg has that same problem too, where you got all those screws in there. The torso, the main torso, isn't as bad. It doesn't really have them until you get to the back. But clearly they did a decent job of hiding some of them, but not as good a job as they could have done. And I will explain why momentarily. So you got a bunch in the back, and then there's a couple in the corners as well. Let me put the back panels on. So 4 of them get covered up by this back panel. So that's not so bad, right? So there you go. That clips in and it stays pretty secure, but you can take it off if you want to. Now, there are 2 screws on this side. There are 2 spots where the sort of jet fuel canister is going to go. So one hole where the peg is going to peg on, and then the little sort of hose thing that comes out fits into this little panel. Why not put those screws in those panels where no one's going to notice them, no one's going to care, and you could sort of have the sculpt be the sculpt and not, you know, have an issue there. You can still see that one. You can still, if you're looking hard enough, see that one. You could have just hidden them behind that thing because it's right there. It's right in front of you, Hasbro. Let me put this one on too. That one seems like a little bit of a no-brainer. Like, it feels foolish to not have that. Then you have a few back here, so I don't know. Maybe they were like, well, if we're not going to cover those ones, what's the point in covering these ones? I don't know. Couldn't tell you. There's a bunch in the head too. That might be my only criticism, but it's a toy, so I don't really care. Again, it feels like more of a nitpick than an actual criticism. Sorry, that wasn't the Studio Hand says, oh wow, that's way worse than mine. Kind of feels like the least skilled troops were doing the final paint. I kind of like it. And that's the thing, like, it kind of just adds character. And for me, if they were all exactly the same and they were all exactly perfect, it feels a little less realistic. And I know that I'm saying that about a plastic toy robot that is a mecha that will fit an action figure inside of it. I get that. There's so many unrealistic things and weird, fantastic things going on here. But that doesn't mean that, you know, that I can't have that opinion. All right, we looked at all the hands, we looked at the blast effects. Let me move these out of the way. Let's take a look at this. Brian Brink, I think you mentioned that you didn't get the screens in yours. The screen details are here in mine. I believe they're decals, so I can see that are decals. My apologies, I'm Canadian. I want to just call them stickers, but if I can't call them stickers, I would call them decals. I believe south of the border, they are more often than not referred to as decals. I don't know what the difference is. I don't know where the pronunciation difference comes from, but anyway. There's stickers on the inside of mine. If you didn't get the stickers, you're missing out because they're kind of cool. It's probably too small, but there's a G.I. Joe headquarters there, which I would love for them to make in classified scale. That as a HasLab, I would buy. And then you get some sort of like charts and graphs and things like that. They're very, very glossy, as you can see. They've sculpted in what I think is meant to look like a keyboard and some handles. These handles are 3D. They're actually parts where you could put a figure's hand on there. These ones up at the top are not. So this just clips right onto the front of the snake armor, just like that. And then what I've noticed is if I telescope these and angle them back first, I will get the ability to open this a little bit wider and a little bit better. So I think, let me just adjust that one last time, and I'll probably just leave it here. Okay, so I will say this, having played with, one of these already, the kind of mech feature, sort of like getting this thing open and getting a figure in and closing it up is pretty darn cool. These flip up. Actually, the first thing I did it this way the first time too, but I think that's wrong. I think the first thing you do is you open up the head. So that flips open. There's a bunch of sculpting detail in there as well. You get this harness in that seat there. Then these will open up. The chest panels will open up as well. And there's sculpting on everything. And let me sort of show you. Let me give you a tour of the inside of the snake armor. So there's more, there's more details on here. There's more decals on there as well. So you get, it looks like it's a map. There's an open and close button. It's green and red buttons say open and close. Tiny, tiny stickers that say that. More sculpted detail in there. There are two joysticks, one on either side, and they do move. They are on a little ball joint. And there's even paint apps on there. There's a little bit of paint, a little bit of black, a little bit of red. And the other side, we get like whoops. On the other side, we get something that looks like a kind of a mission directive. I don't know if there's tiny words printed on that or not. They are very small. I could not possibly read them. And a joystick on this side. Painted. It's the same as the other one. The paint is just sort of in. So sorry, it's not the same. The joystick is inverted, so there's a left and a right joystick. For the design. And I said already that there's some sculpting in there. Every panel has a little bit of sculpting, a little bit of detail. It's very, very cool. And then once you have sort of all the panels on and you want to get a figure in there, you get the harness out of the way, the figure goes in there. It's a little bit tricky. It takes a minute to sort of get the figure oriented to get it in there. I couldn't get mine to sit low enough at first. You really have to sort of fold the legs underneath the chair here. You can sort of see that the chair sticks out, so there's room for him to sort of tuck his feet underneath, which you have to do in order to get a figure in there. But yeah, once you get a figure in there, get the harness done up, and then you can go ahead and sort of close everything up. I found that that piece goes first, chest piece is next, these pieces after that, and these have a little tab. You can see there's a little hole there. If I change, you see black, and then if I change, you can see red. That's because it's a little hole. There is a little tab on the underside of this, and so that will just plug in neatly there. That one is already plugged in, and then the head will close and click shut. And then there you have the snake armor all closed up. The actual screen here, you probably won't be able to see. There's nobody in there, and the light doesn't get through it very well because it's dark. But you can actually see in there. If I angle this, you won't see it, but I can see it. You can see the red seed in there. Anyway, this is transparent. You can see through that, which makes sense. It's like the windscreen or the viewing screen for the pilot. Now, all they had to do was put, a transparent piece, somewhere in the top of the head or somewhere in the back of the head to allow some more light in there. They could have done, light piping, like we've seen with lots of other stuff in the world. Hasbro's done it before on figures and things like that. They could have made it so that you could see inside a little bit easier, but they didn't, and that's okay. Again, more of a nitpick than a criticism. It doesn't really affect the overall, playability of the snake armor as such, at least in my opinion. I mentioned that there's a whole bunch of different hands and things like that. I think my favorite configuration, as I already somewhat mentioned, is going to be this on one hand and this on the other hand, mainly because you get sort of the blast effects that go with them. And so they sort of have the most character to me, almost, maybe, if hands can have character. So there you go. There's the snake armor. I'm actually going to move this one ever so slightly off to the side so that I can show you which figure I put in mine. Now, admittedly, this is sort of a temporary posting for this guy, mainly because I had it on my desk. I put the Stinger driver in there because I have a couple, and because he's a driver, and it kind of made sense. So there he is, sort of sitting in the armor. I didn't lock him in. I don't actually have his hands around the joysticks. I could have. I should have. I would have if I wasn't going to be doing this video. So there you go. That's what it looks like with the figure in there. I'll pull him out and show you what I mean by how he's sort of posed in order to get in here. And then I'll struggle to put him back in. So I had to get him really sort of crunched up. As you can see, like the legs are sort of curled back ever so slightly to sort of get him to fit. Hip is dropped down on the figure and then all the way up, and then knee bent, a lot of what that knee is capable of doing. And yeah, it works once you sort of get him in there. And like I said, you got to get the feet tucked in underneath the seat a little bit so his heels are underneath the seat. There's not a ton of room in there. There is enough for the figure, but there's not much extra. You're going to get the harness strap up out of the way. You're going to move you kind of have to manipulate every one of the little pieces. And it does take a few minutes to sort of get used to how to get him in there and how to get him settled in and actually on the seat. Because like I said, with the legs bent, but not bent correctly, it was a little bit harder. And then you get this all in, get the harness plugged in, get his arms where you kind of want them to be, and so on and so forth. You do you. I mean, if you got one of these, enjoy it, play with it. They're toys. You should play with them. They should come out of the package. They should get played with. I'm going to close this up and see if we can see his head in there. I'm very curious, actually, to see Nope, still can't see it. I can see him in there. But yeah, the light, the angle, nothing's really helping. Nothing's able to sort of show us, you know, the. But there you go. I mean, there's the snake armor. I will show you here. I've got the flame effects in these because these are the ones that I like to use. It's it feels very much like a toy. I guess maybe that is the overall sort of criticism of this thing, is that it's not super rigid. It doesn't feel super strong. It feels like a toy. It feels like something that, you know, young kids will love. Don't get me wrong. I think this is going to be great. I think my kids and I are going to have a lot of fun with this. I mean, we have a lot of fun with all the classified stuff. I just yeah, for adult collectors, maybe not as much. Maybe maybe it's not ideal. And as far as posability and stuff like that, like, yeah, you could get them to pose. You can get it to sort of do some snake stuff. But it works probably a lot better like that than it does as like a really articulated figure, in my opinion. But anyway, who cares? Who cares what I think? Anyway, that's the snake armor. Can I get it in there? There you go. That works. That'll do. Thoughts, questions? Anybody out there? Anybody still paying attention? I love it. I mean, my overall impressions, I guess, are that the this is sort of what I wanted it to be, but maybe not executed as well as it could have been. I think, you know, there's little details that I think could have been done better, but I think overall, you know, the offering is pretty solid. I think the offering is sort of worth the price, and I think they're going to be a ton of fun. That's sort of my overall impression. They're going to look really, really good. For the sake of photography, I think they're going to work really, really well as well. You know, I think there's a lot of play value in these as well, in terms of, you know, the fact that you can put a figure in them. You don't need a figure for them to look really, really cool. But I think, you know, these kind of scratch a little bit of an Exo Squad itch for me personally. I love mech suits. I love mech suits that, you know, can sort of work with action figures and kind of, you know, incorporate with action figures. This is is great. I mean, it's a lot of fun. You know, the snake armor plus a bunch of bats. Like, I think you could do a lot of really, really cool, fun stuff if you're so inclined. If you're a GI Joe fan, if you're a GI Joe toy photographer specifically and especially, I think you're really going to enjoy these. Anyways, it's been an absolute pleasure. As I was saying at the very beginning, it is always more fun to open toys with friends. So thank you guys all for joining me. I will be back again next Wednesday, and then the following Wednesday, and then the following Wednesday. I have a whole lot of toys to open. I just got a gigantic box of stuff from eCollectibles, who is my dealer, and so I've got lots to open. So stay tuned for that. If you don't want to miss those videos, hit that bell icon to get the notifications. I've also got a video on Sunday we're gonna do a monkey business video. So if you are a fan of Animal Warriors of the Kingdom or anything that Spiro does, tune in on Sunday for that. What else? I got more stuff to do. I have so much stuff that I'm almost feel obligated, but in a good way, because I'm excited about toys. I'm kind of refreshed after the summer. I'm feeling good. I got a lot of toys to unbox, and so I'm gonna have lots of videos coming up in the next little bit, and then Legion's Con is coming up very, very soon as well. So oh, song ended. I didn't hit loop. Dang, I'm out of practice. I should probably just wrap this up. I'm just rambling now. Anyways, lots more videos coming up. So, hit the bell icon to get notifications, as I said. And if you're going to be at Legion's Con, stop by the Spiro table and say hello. Until next time, guys. Bye-bye.